So, I went back and forth on saying whether I was going to begin it this way or not, but I am, so here we go. And I want to begin with a joke to get you all laughing even more, so you're not thinking about lunch. Okay. And this is a joke about a woman, a mother, so I won't tell you any more about it. I'm sure there's a symbol behind this. I have no idea what the symbol is, but if you can figure it out, you can tell me later. But anyway, 3 sons left home, and they went out on their own, and they prospered. And they had a great but very kind of almost unhealthy competitive love for their mother. And she was very elderly. So one year, as Easter was drawing near, which it is now, they met to discuss what they were going to give her on that glorious feast. She was a very faithful Catholic, like so many of you here, and she wasn't easy on herself during Lent. So they all knew that she probably had fasted throughout all 40 days, and she did this year after year, and they were kind of getting concerned about her, continuing to fast, and so they just said, we've got to give her something great. So the first son says, remember they're competitive, I'm going to present Mom with a surprise cruise to Hawaii. That sounds pretty good right now, doesn't it? The second smiled and said, well, I'm giving her a Mercedes. And the third leaned back and stated, I've got you both beat. You remember how Mom always enjoyed reading the Bible, and she can't see well enough to read anymore? But I actually located and bought the most remarkable parrot, and that parrot recites Bible verses all day. And it really is one of a kind. Mom can just sit back and listen to Bible verses all day long with this parrot. So Holy Week came and went, and then Easter, and then the 3 were waiting eagerly to hear from their mother, and the day finally came when they would receive their thank you notes in the mail. Yes, the old-fashioned way of thanking someone for something. And in her customarily honest manner, she wrote, Dear Simon, you know I can hardly walk. I appreciate your kindness, but how could I stand upright on a tossing sea? I've never liked Hawaii anyway. Not awful. Second, Dear Theodore, thank you for thinking of me, but I'm too old to drive, and I prefer staying home anyway. I doubt I'll even turn on that Mercedes. But to her third, she gave great delight. Dearest Donald, you have good sense to know just what your mother likes. That chicken was delicious. I do want to say I am from Ann Arbor, Michigan. Don't forget that. Originally, because I know you're going to ask this, from the hills of East Tennessee, so the Smoky Mountains. So your Black Mountains and your Black Hills and your beauty here is very homey to me, and so are you. You're just good people. Anyway, I want to begin with a few words to us priests and religious. Everyone can listen in, but this is, I think, consecrated life in the 3rd millennium will survive and grow to the degree that we, the priests and religious, become the fire that, in the words of Pope Benedict XVI, Pope Emeritus Benedict, quote, ignites other fires and lights up hearts. The distinctive and culturally separating aspects of religious life are its strengths and its luminous signs. To a world centered on efficacy, the religious stands apart as a sign of God's amazing grace, present and tangible in a rapidly spinning world. As vowed counter-culturalists, men and women religious priests assume prophetic roles that fly in the face of materialism, hedonism, bizarre sexual licenses, Meanwhile, living in the greatest freedom through the life centered on God and self-giving to others. To those who scratch their heads and wonder, because after all, as they say, aren't the evangelical counsels just downright inhuman? We live with a boundless joy, Father was mentioning. A boundless joy not of this world. In a historical, cultural, and social context, our evangelical counsels and our promises and vows to God cannot be understood or appreciated. And so we don't look for them to be necessarily. We live them. When lived with vibrancy in the foolishness of love's totality, they form the substance of Chesterton's thought that, quote, every generation is saved by the saints who contradicted the most. Every generation is saved by the saints who contradicted the most. And could anyone have ever contradicted it more than Mary, our nature's solitary boast, when she said yes to the angel's invitation to become the Mother of God? So what does Pope Francis say about Mary? I love this. January 1st, 2017, so a year ago now, Solemnity of Mary, Mother of God, he said, Mary guarded in her heart the passage of God. This is really good. Deep within, she had learned to listen to the heartbeat of her Son. And that, in turn, taught her, throughout her life, to discover God's heartbeat in history. He continues, mothers are the strongest antidote to our individualistic and egotistic tendencies, to our lack of openness and to our indifference, end quote. Therefore, I've always believed it's Mary who's the secret behind any religious or priestly vocation. I have no doubt about that. Whether or not we sometimes acknowledge that. And we certainly need Mary now. Our world can be characterized as pluralistic, multicultural, postmodern, post-Christian, globalized, shaped by modern information and communication technologies. Our world is in a state of perpetual change. And we cry out for real answers and the truths to which we may cling on the rocky seas of life. Hasn't Mary, our mother, always come to us to save us in times of distress? Think of her apparitions of Guadalupe, 1531, which were the impetus for so many people becoming Catholic, more people becoming Catholic than had left the Catholic Church in the Protestant Reformation. God's so much greater than we are. He's got such a great plan, and He loves to work it through His mother because we get it, and we love her. And she's tender, but she's stubborn, and I love that. She gets us. Think of her role as Queen of the Holy Rosary. Check it out. A title given her by the great Dominican Pope, St. Pius V, in thanksgiving for his Rosary Crusade, which miraculously saved Christendom during the Battle of Lepanto, October 7th, which now is the Feast of Our Lady of the Rosary, 1571. Just 40 years after Guadalupe. A good mother always comes to her children when they are in dire need. Look at the miraculous middle apparitions to Catherine Labouré in 1830. Her appearances at La Salette in 1846, at Lourdes in 1858, notice how many, in Knock in 1879, in Fatima, we just celebrated the 100 years of Fatima, 1917. And many of you have mentioned mention to me, some of you, your conversions at Medjugorje. And Pope Francis has certainly approved of the first portions of those. But we know Mary is at work because all her being desires our union with her Son. You know, on the worst of days, just think of that. You really can't go too far astray if you love Mary. She will not let you. Get ready. As I said, she's a strong mother. But she will have her way if we just crack the door. And I want to mention, many people will say to me that they don't have much devotion to Mary, or that that's come to them later, and that might be some of you. And then they'll say to me, how did you get such a devotion to Mary? Just talk to her. Just love her. Just be with her inside yourself. Just get your statue of her, whatever is the image that means the most to you. And no, she is not a statue. She's moving all over. She's a wild Mediterranean woman who is on fire with love to get you to love her Son and to fulfill the divine plan from all eternity for your creation. And your moment is now. That's Mary. And in this conference, dealing with priestly and religious vocations, let us heed the words of another great Jesuit, Father John Hardin. He's an outstanding American Jesuit priest and theologian. And I'll have to tell you a kind of quick, funny story. I already knew him, and I just loved his, go get it, sister. He would always shake his fist. I love that energy. Yeah. And so I ended up being in one of his classes, and it was on the church. Well, this is some years ago. I wasn't as studious as I am now, don't you know? So in any case, I thought, I know the church. Good grief, I'm a professor religious in the Dominican. Don't I know the church? It's going to be breezy, easy breezy, whatever. So he announced he was going to give a test. The book was like 5 inches thick that he had written. I'm like, I think I probably know a simpler form of all this, but I know the church. So I did not study too well. Probably didn't much at all, actually, when I think about it now. But in any case, we had the test, and it was all true and false. Do you know those are the worst? I learned from him as a teacher. If you really want to get students to study, give a true and false test, because the line's so fine. Well, these were very fine lines. So, being the great psychologist that he was, he started the next day handing out the test. And I thought this was just cruel when I realized what was happening. He started with the highest grades, and then when you got your paper, you could leave. So after a bunch were leaving, I was sliding down in my chair going, maybe he lost my test. That would be merciful God. You want to show your mercy right now. He finally called my name, and I had a 47. I just died. So I did not leave. Also being stubborn, I sat there, and I waited till everybody was gone, and I went up to him, and I said, listen, friend, what's this supposed to mean? And he looked at me, and he goes, you got me 47. And I said, what does that equal on your grade scale? He goes, you're a teacher, what does it equal on yours? And I'm like, oh, we're talking about yours. And he said, sister, you failed solidly. Oh my gosh, I left. I thought, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? This is not going to be good. One of those fears. Not going to appreciate, Anyway, I sweated bullets and studying. I pulled it up and passed with an A, but I never learned so much about the church. But I want to mention, Father Hardin died in 2000 in Detroit, and I was blessed to be able to go to his funeral, and I kind of leaned over and said, remember the 47? Anyway. Just make sure that, you owe me prayers, as if he really did. But anyway, I knew he knew me too. But this is a quote from Father Hardin. Mary brought into the world the one from whom every vocation is derived. This is every vocation is derived from Mary. Except for Christ, no one would be called. And except for his call, no one could respond. Isn't that neat? She is the mother of the great high priest, who calls others to share in his priesthood. And she is the mother of the first religious, who invites others to follow in his footsteps. Only believers know they have a vocation. Only those who trust implicitly in God's promises respond to God's call. There's no more effective way of fostering vocations, here we go, than asking the mother of Jesus to ask her son to extend the invitation. Got that, some of you parents? Ask the mother of Jesus to ask her son to extend his invitation. And there's no more effective way of remaining firm in the vocation than to beg Mary for that grace of perseverance. Whatever is our vocation, to beg for the grace of perseverance every day. Don't ever take it for granted. I remember as a postulate, Mother of Son, who was my novice mistress, now she's been my most superior, and I remember her saying, it just so surprised me. She said, pray every day for the gift of faith. And I thought, gosh, really? And it just stuck with me. Pray every day for the gift of faith and perseverance in your vocation. Vocations come from families, obviously. So, for the priest here, what did your mom and your dad say when you first mentioned that you thought you had a priestly vocation? And to the parents, what would you think if your son or daughter mentioned that to you, going to the seminary or to enter a religious community? As vocation director, I've heard every answer possible, I do believe. Parents play a far greater role, and Father and I will speak to us tomorrow, in vocations than I think you give yourselves credit for sometimes. Mother Mary certainly did, even for her son. We think of Mary as that role. And though we don't hear that much from St. Joseph, don't we know he did? And I just love it. One of my favorite meditations on St. Joseph is little Jesus in the carpenter's shop learning from his dad how to ply the wood and how to form the furniture and everything, and getting his splinter, and Joseph rushing over and saying, oh, son, let me take care of it, and putting it up to his mouth and receiving the first Eucharist. Hey, like that. Joseph. No wonder the church calls him the patron of vocations, the great saint whose feast day is today. So I wanted to read you somewhat quickly some thoughts from a father on this feast day of fathers, Joseph, of a daughter who entered our community this past August 28th. He says, I am the father of 5 girls and 1 boy. Like most fathers, I love each one of my children, and as they grew up, I would often think about what they would choose to be in their life. What would be their life's work? Would they have children? Would they make me a grandfather? As a convert to Catholicism, my first thoughts never went towards a possible religious vocation. Yet that's what happened when my oldest daughter began considering the possibility. But nothing really came of that for her, because today she's the mother of my 2 grandchildren. Then daughter number 3 started talking about the possibility of a religious vocation. And along the way, I learned a few things that I would like to pass on. None of my children have taken the path I thought they would. I love God's surprises. But it was their path, and it was important that they choose it. I had to fight the temptation to guide my 3rd daughter, as many young people are so terrified of following their dreams because they're not 100% sure. That's not good. Are we 100% sure of anything except that God exists and He loves us? Isn't this a life of faith? Would God deny us the privilege of exercising our faith? Especially when it comes to something to why did He create us? What is our vocation? What's our way to heaven? Who are the people we're supposed to influence along the way? It's faith. It's beautiful. He continues. My daughter went through these concerns, and only then did I hesitate to kind of say, if you think there's a chance that God is calling you to this life, go for it. As Father Brian was just saying, as Matt was just saying, go for it. What's the worst thing that can happen? You try it and you find out this isn't where God is calling you. you've gotten some incredible formation and the knowledge that God does have something else waiting for you. So when daughter number 3 made the decision and was accepted by the community, our community, we were happy, and yet we were nervous. That's a good, healthy reaction. How would we ever be able to raise the funds to pay off college debt and still have money for the needed clothes and other supplies? And he says, God worked everything out, of course. But it was hard when she left. Limited communication, as there were no cell phones or emails. But we would write back and forth with long letters, and you could see God was at work in her, and more each letter we would receive. She was transformed and being transformed, and that made our acceptance easier. End quote. You know, St. John Paul the Great, one of my heroes, just way up there, echoed some of this thinking on February 2nd, the year 2000, the Great Jubilee year. He said, consecrated men and women, you no longer define your life by family, by profession, by earthly interest. You choose God as your one identifying mark. Wow. Thus, you acquire a new family identity. He had already alluded to this in 1992 in his letter to priests, Pastoris Ministry, when he said, every aspect of priestly formation can be referred to Mary. The human being who has responded better than any other to God's call. Mary was called to educate the one eternal priest who became docile and subject to her motherly authority. With her example and intercession, the Blessed Virgin keeps vigil and watches over the growth of vocations in the Church. Seems to me there's 2 ways that Mary serves as a model for vocations. She's a model for those responding to the call, and she's a model for those who are needed to help them. She's the one who said yes, and the one who leads others to say yes. How did Mary respond to the Lord's call? First and foremost, she was already living in fidelity to God's love. She did all the ordinary things that a Jewish woman would do. Fetching water, cooking, weaving, sewing, and she did them out of love of God. Embracing the normalcy of daily existence. Normalcy of daily existence is holiness. Being exactly where God knew she would be when he decided to send the angel, Gabriel. Young people must learn that fidelity to small things today will produce a future grace of making the extraordinary seem ordinary. Young people must learn that fidelity to the small things today will give us the grace someday for the extraordinary to just seem ordinary. We might ask, what did Jesus do in 30 years of his life? Simply shared everyday life with his mother. And don't we know that she too has a lot to teach us? Just consider, in the midst of the daily grind, when in this young girl's life an angel appeared and asked her a vocational question. And she said yes to the unknown. I love that. Yes to the unknown, because the unknown came from God. So she doesn't need to know. He does. She was convinced of God's love, and she accepted, and she knew she would be ridiculed. Father brought this out in his reflections, even potentially being stoned to death due to his pregnancy. She glimpsed at that point some of her son's future sufferings that she already knew would occur because, as a good Jewish woman, she knew the Scriptures. And she knew the sword would have to go through her heart to pierce his. She took the greatest leap of faith that any human ever has. She proclaimed her fiat, and she became actively accepting, actively accepting. Her yes teaches all of us to put out into the deep. God doesn't promise that vocational discernment will be easy. In fact, if it's easy, if a young woman sits in front of me and I say, what is your sacrifice that you're giving to God for all he's given to you? And she says, well, actually, I can't really think of too much because I'm like, but I'm not so sure you have a religious vocation. Because God has to get deep into the heart. And many times, being human, that comes through some suffering. But who said suffering is bad? What are these sorrowful mysteries of the Rosary? They're the way to get to the glorious. Yeah. So it's not supposed to always be easy, but it comes with the knowledge of his love, and it's supposed to take courage. Something I have found the millennial generation has a lot of, but you've got to get into them and challenge them for it. And that will be another talk. Mary trusted, and she rose immediately to go to another, to go to Elizabeth the child. Mary was the proto-evangelist, and she brought her hidden son, who then sanctified Elizabeth's son in Elizabeth's womb. And the church fathers tell us that the first baptism Jesus performed would be the one who 30 years later would baptize him in the waters of the Jordan. The infant John would know that overflow of the same Spirit who already filled Mary and her son. When we choose to act on the Holy Spirit's inspirations, to consider a vocation of priesthood or religious life, God works wonders in all the hearts involved in part of this. Every effort towards vocation magnifies its benefits back to each of us. St. John Paul the Great said, to work for another's vocation is to secure your own. And don't you know, as vocation director, I use that all the time. Okay, kid. You are opening to your vocation. You go find another one if you want to secure this. It's very true. We're in it as a family by baptism. We all are essential for each other. Whether or not we will meet this side of eternity or the next, we are essential. Our holiness is essential for everyone else. And the zeal to get up and move and speak it and give it to others. It's beautiful. John 2:17 says, zeal for your house will consume me. That is written above the statue of St. Catherine of Siena in the National Basilica of the Immaculate Conception in Washington. And I love to go there and just stare at the words. Zeal for your house will consume me. Not make me happy, give me a little energy, wake me up in the morning sometime. What? Consume. Totality. Total gift. I want to mention that my community's vocational discernment retreats, and this will flow for some of you who will hear my talk tomorrow also on the millennial generation. But when we began our community 21 years ago, 4 of us, and we went up to Michigan. The story goes on and on. I'm not going to get into all that, but I'm just going to say that we knew, as in any family, it's all about pro-life, isn't it? These priests here are on fire with vocations to the priesthood and to the religious life. My sisters and I are on fire with vocations to the priesthood and to the religious life, and all of us are on fire with vocations to good married life, because that's where it all begins. And I'll mention that in a few minutes also. But we began these retreats, 24 hours. The instructions are you come, you bring your sleeping bag, because you get to sleep on the floor in the school, because there's no place for you in our convent. So you get to sleep on the floor in the school, and you bring your rosary and your sleeping bag and a wide open heart for Jesus and Mary to fill. 24 hours only. They began with 13 was the first group. The one girl who entered became our novice mistress, and she's now the superior of our sisters in Rome. And then you can go on and on. If they're 3 times a year. So go fast forward. I counted this last ice storm that we had, that one of you were telling me your sister came to. We now have had 10,000 young women make these retreats. And they come from all the United States, Canada, they have come from all over Europe, they have come from Australia. We have one novice from Australia, and then the one in November had 179 young women, and the one that came the furthest came from Malaysia, and she is in process of application right now. I don't think we think big enough for the millennials. I think we are thinking sometimes it's too small for God. And when He breaks us out of that, we could change the world, because that's what He did with a mere little 12 or 11. And so young people really do want this. And what are some of their fears? I'm going to disappoint my parents. I absolutely hate that fear. I understand it, because if I was a physical mom, I'd be bawling my eyes out too, but I don't think I would say you can't do it. My own mom bawled her eyes out. She had 2 daughters, we're both sisters. No. What about grandchildren? And of course we were raised saying, when I get my grandchildren, so for us, it's like, I don't know how you're going to do that. But anyway. But then we have this sister from Iowa, and we met her at Notre Dame. And I just knew she was in pre-med. And I remember saying to her, okay, after we talked for a while, she said, yes, I think I probably do have a religious vocation. And so she was really thinking she probably better come. Now she was just finishing her sophomore year. Well, her parents had, the heart attacks. Typical. I'm like, just wait it out, just stay calm, they're going to see your joy, they'll be convinced by your joy, let them cry, what can you do? God will take care, this whole, which is true. But they really got to her. And so she emails me and she said, I'm going to wait till I graduate. I email back and say, no way. If you do that, you will lose your vocation. Now, some of you might be saying, that sounds terrible. Believe me, I've been around the block a number of times with this. It happens. So she wrote back and she said, oh, sister, but I'm going to stay plugged into the pro-life. I would probably be president of the pro-life group. I'm going to do these mission trips. I'm going to. And I wrote back and said, that's called the heresy of good actions. You're trying to convince God by your good actions that He can wait for your heart. Well, that finally rang home. So, she's one of our superiors now, and when I take her on trips with me, and they ask her to give her vocation story, she will say, if I hadn't entered after that sophomore year at Notre Dame, I would not be a sister today. I know that. God has a time, and it's not that everybody is ready at the same time. And that's important. Each individual, before any of the priests that are working in vocation discernment and seminary, before any of the sisters, before you, each one of your children, there's a uniqueness that will never be repeated again and has never been here before. And that uniqueness is what makes that person so special. That's God's holy creativity, as Father's talking about imagination. Imagine God's imagination when He looks at the likes of us, and He's the one that did it all. And there is a time, and there is a place. We send sisters to lots of different communities, and the vast majority leave these retreats saying, I have discerned my vocation, and it's marriage. And we rejoice with them to the hilt. And I always say, years go by, I want some of your daughters. And now, 21 years later, I'm getting the daughters of some of them who discerned marriage at our first retreats. We're building up the world, as the Sisters of Life say, one soul at a time. And that's all we've got, is that one person in front of us, that one soul to pray for now, and then another, and then another. But the beauty, Pope Francis says, at one time, those who were persecuted sought refuge with high-ranking noble women, and with their cloak, regarded as powerful, was held out as a sign of welcoming. The protection was granted to this person. So it is with us, he says, in regards to Our Lady. Her mantle is always open to receive each of us. In December's report for the Center for Applied Research in the Apostolate, I'm only going to mention one thing because Father and I will probably mention this tomorrow also in more detail. But this I loved. Religious men and women professing perpetual vows in religious life in 2016. 9 out of 10 responding said that they had participated in some type of private prayer before they entered the religious institute or the seminary. 2/3 participated in Eucharistic adoration. I cannot talk enough about Eucharistic adoration. You might say, why would anybody go halfway across the world to go to a 24-hour retreat? Here's the answer, and I've been asked this so many times, and I'm always like, you ready for the big secret? Yeah. Tell us the big secret. What are you doing? It's all-night Eucharistic adoration. Get before Jesus, and especially for us women, keep your mouth shut internally, which is very hard for us. Ask the questions, leave the blanks, don't fill them in, and let Him tell you. And you'll know it's true, and you'll want it. It's incredible, the depth of prayer, again, as Father was referring to, the all-night Eucharistic adoration. So, John Paul II had a great devotion to Mary, to the Rosary. His dad, I love this, we all know his story and how his mother died when he was just 8. His brother died just a few years after that, a medical doctor, and he died catching a deadly disease from one of his patients that he didn't have to treat, but he did, Edmund. And then that was John Paul and his dad. And his dad was a hero to him in so many different ways. But it was his dad's love of the Rosary that I think really affected that future saint and got to the core of his being so strongly. And he would later say, the Rosary has accompanied me in moments of joy and in moments of difficulty. To it I have entrusted my concerns. In it I've always found comfort. And on October 29th, 1978, just 2 weeks after his election to the See of Peter, he says, I frankly admitted the Rosary is my favorite prayer. A marvelous prayer. Marvelous in its simplicity and its depth. I probably would not be a sister today if it wasn't for the family Rosary. My parents, there was no way of wiggling out, no matter how many friends we had come over and play it with us. We would hear the call, Mom, in the evening, time for the family Rosary, and you kids get in here. And we go, but we have all these. So then, being raised in the South, we would, jiggle our medals or talk about this and say, we have to go pray the Rosary, but you all can come with us. And they go, no, thank you, that's that Catholic thing. And we go, yeah, it's our privilege. And we march up there in the beginning and go, we were having fun outside. We were complaining, Mom and Dad, not to the neighbors, you see. Because they had to love that Rosary. So I can honestly say that's where I found my vocation. At the end of it, my father would lead us prayer to the Sacred Heart, consecration found in the Sacred Heart. And then we'd go into this prayer for vocations that their kids, my sister, brother, and myself, would find our vocation. And it's that part of the scripture that says, those who leave father and mother for my sake. And I would be on my knees leaning over a chair, and I'd go over on my knees and I'd hug Mom and I'd say, I never will leave you. So at 17, I knew the convent, man. But in the name, Sister Joseph Andrew, Joseph helped me enter right after high school. And I really knew that was my vocation and I wanted it. And then Andrew is my father's name, and he's just such a hero to me because his love of the Rosary. So, and my sister is Sister Mary Teresa, and Teresa is my mom's name, and she converted from Southern Baptist to Catholic, which was something else. But anyway, I hesitated to do this, but I'm not going to hesitate anymore. I'm going to just do it. And it's something that was published that I wrote after my father went home to heaven, I do believe. And it's entitled, The Rosary, Sweet Chain Linking Us to God. His legs imparted security as I leaned my little body against them. My babble continued, fired by my desire to entrust to my beloved Daddy all the secrets of a 3-year-old heart. When finished, silence pervaded in the darkening shadows. He sat there, fingering his rosary and gazing out at the evenings for stars. Even at that tender age, I knew my father wasn't always present to this world. Impatiently, I tugged on his pants leg and said, "Daddy, did you even hear me?" "Oh, I'm sorry, honey. I didn't know you were there. I was talking with Jesus and Mary. Tell me again and I'll listen, I promise." Only one question burned within me. "Daddy, will you promise to carry me with you when Mother Mary takes you to heaven?" I wanted to be in on this. "Well, honey, I'll do my best. But little girls usually outlive their fathers." "Well, I don't want to," I protested. "See this rosary? It's like a silver thread that Mary gives to hold on to during life, while she's at the other end pulling us closer to heaven. But I want to go to heaven with you and Mom. Someday, you will be able to receive Jesus in Holy Communion. And when he comes, all those who love him will be present too. And in that way, we pray all our family will be together." I sat there memorizing his hands, looking at his rosary as he quietly continued to pull that special thread, he called it, between his fingers. Growing up, my parents saw to it, as I mentioned, that we as a family prayed the rosary daily. I know I found my vocation on these beads. Not only did it mean everything to my 100% Polish father, but the rosary was always in the hands of my Baptist, converted to Catholic mom. In fact, if I close my eyes now, I still hear the beads hitting against the iron when she's pressing the family's clothes. It's a lovely sound that is so mom to me, will be all my life. She just kept that rosary in her hands. So we'll spin things quickly to a good number of glorious years later. My mom had been taken home to her eternal reward. My brother was living in Boston. My mom's 2 daughters were in the convent, but we received the very unique privilege of being able to take care of my father towards the end of his life. On one afternoon in August of 2003, at that point my father was permanently confined to bed and under the care of hospice, I was leaning over him when suddenly I noticed he began to pull an invisible thread between his fingers. His rosary had fallen to the side of his pillow where he couldn't reach it, so I picked it up and put it back in his hands. "Shorter and shorter," I heard him say. I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "My mother, father, sister, brothers all died. How hard to take. My wife has now died. She took my heart with her. And now I'm leaving this world. I'm slipping away. We all must do the best we can. I'm trying to be what Jesus wants of me." I pleaded in my frail humanity, "Daddy, please don't leave me." His passionate eyes penetrated, so I rephrased my plot. "Daddy, are you happy?" "Yes, honey, very, very happy." All the while, he continued to pull the thread of his rosary. He said, "We'll stay in this together. And when you receive Holy Communion, your mother and I will be hugging you with Jesus and Mary." He went home to heaven, I do believe, June 7th, 2004. His last whispered words summed up his whole life: "I love you." He died visibly as he had lived mystically, his hand over his heart, holding the thread of his rosary, and his face lit by the smile he had promised that I would see when Mary came to take him from the shadows and lift him into the refulgence of beatific light. My mom was taken first from this earth, and she left a heartsick husband. So my sister and I were most blessed to be able to bring our father up to Michigan and care for him. In truth, he cared for us. Once again, by all his prayers, and the beautiful acceptance he witnessed in the midst of life's most difficult moment. In a eulogy written by one of our sisters, she expressed, "No one loved people like Mr. B did. He used to say, if you love people, they can't help but love you back." Certainly that was true for him. He was friends with everybody. He believed with every fiber of his being that humanity was beautiful. God loves you, he would say with flowing tears. Many hearts would melt looking into his deep blue eyes and seeing in them such an unshakable faith. You always knew when you left him, he would continue praying his rosary, and now it will be offered for you. I often ask myself if my eyes love enough to see the beauty promised in every thread of life. Who would have given much significance to a scrap of bread or drops of wine? But Christ saw in these a promise of the Eucharist. Our lives are full of the mundane, but let us rejoice. For our Holy Father tells us, John Paul II, in Ecclesia Eucharistia, those who wish to pursue the path of holiness require no new programs. They merely need to sit at the feet of Mary, woman of the Eucharist, and to love and proclaim Christ in living fully their baptismal calling. My saintly parents knew that the fabric of holiness is woven out of the threads of everyday life. And if the Church ever saw fit to raise them to the altar, I would hope she would do so under the title Mystics of the Mundane. It will not be ideas or technology that will give us hope or comfort, but our mother's face, her hands caressing our lives, her mantle giving us the shelter. Let us learn how to take refuge going each day to our Mother Mary. And if we are truly concerned about encouraging more priestly and religious vocations for increasing the increasing needs of Mother Church in the third millennium, let us invoke our Heavenly Mother Mary and never forget to thank her. And I will close with Marian words given us by the great French novelist, essayist, poet, and Catholic, Léon Blois. And if you didn't know any better, I haven't told you, you might think they were the words of St. Maximilian Kolbe, very similar. As long as you have not learned to know Mary and have not received her in your heart, you will remain in darkness, because you can receive the Holy Spirit only in her and through her. Keep the exceptional teaching I am giving you hidden in the depths of your soul, and it will make you glow before the Lord like a magnificent torch. Now, if you ask me how it happens that Mary, who is a real woman, or rather the most real woman, is so completely identified with the third divine person that she can't ever be separated from him, I shall be obliged to leave you without an answer. I'm not the confidant of the Blessed Trinity, but I know in a way that is absolutely, infinitely certain, this is so. God bless you all.
Thank you very much, sister. I was struck, we were focused on one Eucharist, as Father Mason was, and on Mary. We look back over the history of saints of this, generation, and even back to the popes, since Leo the King through, Francis. They have two major devotions. Mary and Jesus present in the Eucharist. This is not rocket science.
And John Paul II says, the Eucharist has the taste and the aroma of Mary.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
We have the opportunity to ask Sister a few questions. If you want to use those microphones on the sides, again, as we did earlier, please go ahead and step forward. As you're stepping forward, I have my first question, Sister. You started out talking about the evangelical councils. Could you share a little bit about what those are?
Thanks, Father. Okay, the evangelical councils That's great, Father. Thank you. I take some things for granted sometimes. That's our 3 vows as religious. So poverty, chastity, and obedience. Some communities maybe take the 4th vow, but those 3 are pretty stable. And so poverty doesn't mean we don't have stuff, but we don't own it. Do you know how nice that is? I remember when Sister Maria Catherine, who was worked in these big Catholic circles for Catholic think tanks all over the USA, and she entered, and somebody said to her, "What's it going to be like not to have your iPad and your, all this other kind of stuff?" And she goes, "That was the biggest ball and chain. I have been freed." And I just love that answer, because you really are free to be more present to whoever's in front of you. That's something we need to teach. So poverty, we don't own it, but we use it as we need it for our apostolate. And Dominic always said, have as many books as you want and need, because the motto of the order is truth. And so we're teachers, so books are a little bit different, but everything else we don't need that much. Chastity, which is my favorite, is how do you really love? And I was laughing when you were asking Father Mason, and I hope he does tell us the rest of the story, because he's got a really good story, how he knew his vocation. And I was thinking, I knew mine because I just loved guys. They were the balance, as we keep saying, the completion, as John Paul II teaches in Theology of the Body, between man and woman. And I just loved too many of them to pick one. And I knew that. And so I just remember looking up and saying, okay, you're it. Because that's the only way I can have the friendships that I really do want, and yet not own one as my own. Because that would never be enough. Anyway, how do you love? How do you give your heart to Christ? And of course that is important in married life as well. It's important it's important to all of us. And then obedience, and that's where some people would say, oh gosh, isn't that the hardest thing? Well, we just have a girl that entered the community from 10 years in the Air Force. Do you know she's so obedient? And she's so nice. I'm like, we need some more Air Force or Marines or whatever. They really kind of learn obedience early on. But the reality is, I don't really have to worry to the same degree or to the same depth in some ways, because the big decisions will be told me by obedience, and it's so freeing. I can think of so many times in my life I would not have done or chosen what I was told to do. And obviously, in the vow of obedience, I did it, and I loved it. And I thought I would have been so much less as the person I am had I not gone there and taught those kids and did that. And I just wanted to stay where I was because I loved that. And so the vows free us to be totally open to God. They're immensely positive. And that's the way that I like to look at them. So they are known as the evangelical counsels.
No, thank you very much. And thank you, Sister. We're going to take a break now. Our next thing on the agenda is lunch, and you're going to be back again for more
Let me
questions.
mention one other thing. I think at the doors there is a sheet. It's called Marian Reflections that you can pick up if you wish. So anyway, thanks.
Thank you.